Now he's heckling me. This is exactly what we said he would do. He doesn't want to engage, he just wants to heckle. But Surah 71:19 says this.
Content over everything.
Now, bearing in mind, he says he believes the Quran. So I want to ask him, according to Surah 71:19, and Allah has made the earth for you as a carpet. Now, when I say as a carpet, what image comes into your mind? Do you imagine a round ball? No, you don't. You imagine a rug laid flat on the ground. That's what you imagine. So when Muhammad said, I have made the earth for you like a carpet, he's wrong. The Quran is scientifically wrong. And yet Muslims will challenge Christians about our Bible and yet won't answer questions about their Quran. And it doesn't just say this once, it repeats it again and again and again. In Surah 78, 6 and 7, it says, are you listening? Surah 78, 6 and 7. Have we not made the earth as a wide expanse and mountains as pegs? A wide expanse, not a ball, not a circle. It says in the book of Job, in the Bible, that the earth, that God has placed the circle of the earth upon nothing. The circle of the earth upon nothing. By contrast, the Quran says that the earth is a carpet, a wide expanse, and that mountains are pegs that make it secure. Mountains are the result precisely of the earth's instability, not a cause of its stability. It is based upon the movement of tectonic plates. The Quran repeats this again in Surah 15:19. Once again, it says, and the earth we have spread out like a carpet. When I say carpet, do you imagine a round ball? No, you imagine a flat shape. And ladies and gentlemen, let's not be fooled into thinking that everyone thought this back then. Because the ancient Greek philosophers were able to identify that the earth was round using nothing but their own vision. Watching ships go over the horizon, they would seem to one sight to sink. Why would ships sink? Because the earth was round. In the book of Job, in the Bible, it says the Lord has placed the circle of the earth upon nothing. The Quran is in error. It is not from God. There are errors in it, and the Quran says to me, as an inquirer, not to you Muslims, but to me as a non-believer, if this were from any other than Allah, you, as in I, the Christian, would find many errors therein. And so when I read the Quran, according to the Quranic test that Allah has given to me, and I find errors in the Quran, I have to conclude that the Quran is not from Allah. So, is that the only error that we have in the Quran, or does it get worse? It gets worse. So much worse. So, in Surah 50... Now, 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. the Muslim heckler says to me, you cannot speak Arabic.
Yeah, he said that.
He seems to forget that 90% of Muslims can't speak Arabic. Most Muslims can be found in Pakistan, India and Indonesia. Their native language is not Arabic. I don't believe in Arabization. I believe that my God can communicate to everyone in a universal language. If their God can't, it is because their God is deficient. He is a failure as a communicator. By contrast, we Christians believe that because God became a man and we can tell stories about this man, it is the message and not the words that are important, which means the message can be translated and God can communicate to you in any language. By contrast, Muslims believe that every word of the Quran is directly from Allah, which means you cannot translate it into another language. And they pick and choose when they want to believe their translations. When they find a gullible Westerner open to Islam, they give you a translation and they say to you, you can trust the translation. But when, as I did, you find errors, mistakes and contradictions in that Quran, that Quranic translation, suddenly they say, oh, you can't trust the translation. So they're happy to give it to you if you're gullible, but if you're a critical thinker, suddenly it's not trustworthy. Double standards.
You're talking as if all Muslims are one person, and second of all, you're criticizing Islam. You're not understanding Islam. There's a huge difference.
So,
You don't read it to see the holiness.
he says, I am speaking as if all Muslims are one person. Allow me to correct myself because that criticism is fair. I am speaking specifically of those who are carrying out dawah, not all Muslims, and that is a fair point. But then he says, I'm reading the Quran to find errors, not its holiness. I do not find holiness in a book that teaches that I as a Christian should be made into a second-class citizen. I as a Christian do not find holiness in a book that says women can be held as captives, that your right hands possess and that you can have sex with. That's what the Quran says. I don't find holiness in a book that says you can marry pre-pubescent children. I don't find holiness in a book that says slay the unbelievers. I don't find holiness in a book that denigrates my belief as a Christian and misrepresents them to Muslims. I do not find holiness in a book that demands of me as an inquirer that I should not find errors in this book, but yet when I do, the fault is mine and not the author of the Quran. There is a lot of unholiness in the Quran.
Right.
But will you find unholiness in Jesus Christ?
You are interpreting, you're taking the interpretation of somebody who worked for Daesh, and you're saying that this is what Islam is, right? You're not seemingly trying to understand the comprehensiveness of the Quran and the proper ways in which you can interpret it.
So the argument of the brother
I didn't continue.
is that I am taking the logic of someone who has interpreted the Quran according to ISIS. He is wrong. I am taking the interpretation given by Abdullah Yusuf Ali, He is not a member of ISIS. He was a trusted translator of the Quran. These are his words, not ISIS's words.
Do you know that there
Translated
are 1.2
by
million
Abdullah Yusuf Ali. The name's right there on the book.
Ask all of them, they trust him? No.
So, let's look at some more errors in the Quran.
Muslims and what they believe about the Quran.
More errors in a book that is supposed to be free from error.
Hello.
I would like
Free
to
from
ask you a
error.
question, but you yourself are a question.
You can ask a question in a moment.
No.
In a moment.
Let us speak in it.
The Quran says,
My point, and you
the
want to
Quran says in Surah 36, 38 to 40, I'll make this point, then you can ask a question.
Okay.
The Quran says in Surah 36, 38 to 40, the sun runs its course for a period determined for him. That is the decree of him, the exalted in might, the all-knowing. And the moon, we have measured for it its mansions to traverse till she returns like the old and withered lower part of a date stalk. It is not permitted to the sun to catch up the moon, nor can night outstrip the day. The Quran is saying there is no such thing as a solar eclipse, because the moon catches up with the sun and night overtakes the day during a solar eclipse. The birds of the air go to sleep. The heat of the sun disappears and it feels as if it is night, and you cannot see without a light. By every definition, this is darkness. By every definition, this is night, and darkness has caught up with the day. The Quran is in error. Go on, you wanted to ask a question.
Or quite possibly it's an explanation, a very poetic explanation of how lightness comes to darkness and darkness comes to light, which shows you the interconnectedness of the world, right? See, what you're doing right here is you're giving me an interpretation out of criticism rather than understanding, right? You're cherry picking some sort of understanding in order to show the Quran is false, which is the main reason why you will win no converts today. Not today.
Brother, we're winning
not tomorrow.
converts. I was speaking to a convert just 2 days ago.
Okay.
Can I talk?
How many?
He's supposedly asking a question. I'm just waiting for him. What's your question, bro?
Let him speak.
Exactly.
What's your question?
In the very beginning,
Oh, let him speak.
you spoke about completely different topics, right? You talked about premarital sex. You talked about how Christians are seen as second-class citizens. And there's a third point I can't seem to remember. How did you move from this to the sun and the moon?
Is that your question?
There is no coherence in your speech.
There's no actual question that he's making. He's just making a series of points. He says that there's no connection between the things that I'm saying. What he seems to forget is that the reason why I talked about the unholiness of the Quran is because I started by talking about the errors in the Quran and the fact that Allah says there should be no such errors in the Quran. It challenges me to find them, and I do. Now, if I find errors in the Quran, according to the Quran, it's not from Allah. And then he says, oh, you're reading the Quran to find errors, not its holiness. And that is why I talked about the fact that the Quran says, marry prepubescent children, have sex with your female captives.
Where?
I'll show you.
Show me.
I will.
I will show you that
I
your
will show you.
interpretation is taken
I will show you.
somebody who works for
I
ISIS.
will show you. Unfortunately for him,
Nothing to spread peace and love in this world.
unfortunately for him, we have a better example in our Lord Jesus Christ. A man who at a time when slavery was normal did not have slaves.
Don't touch me like that. I'm just talking in it.
Bro, who you been aggressive
He's
with?
trying. I'm being aggressive with you.
He's being aggressive with me.
I'll clap your head in it.
Are you going to clap me? So the Muslim's threatening to punch me. He's threatening to punch me.
We're not threatening.
He's just done it.
No, we're
He's
not.
just done it.
You're making funny reasons about the
So,
Quran.
this Quran.
Yeah, about this Quran.
What's wrong with this Quran?
There's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Guys,
You're reading it to see.
No, bro. You're wrong. You need to do some more reading. We need to do some more reading. You need to do some more reading.
He's answering questions. You guys are asking questions.
This is.
He tries to.
You guys can't take
Dude, if I can be clear, the point of Speaker's Corner is if you want to fight with someone, fight with them on the grounds of words. If your argument,
Bro, lecture him. He was the one throwing out the threats, not me.
that's precisely the point. I'm sharing a point.
So lecture him, not me.
Turned away and walked away.
So,
Guy, he just wants the world to hear him.
oh, he just wants the world to hear him threaten me. Do you see how it doesn't matter what Muslims do in the corner, Muslims will always defend them.
What are you talking about?
Brother, if someone comes
Now
and
you're
threatens
coming up with this generalized claim about how Muslims act.
No,
When you make-
it's on film. He threatened me.
Wait,
You're defending him. You're doing it. You're doing
Did
it.
you threaten him?
I didn't even threaten. I told you let us talk. You're not
okay,
gonna let us
so-
step on your head.
It's on camera. Go and check it out. Go and check it out.
He's not letting us
So,
talk. So if he doesn't let us talk,
so do you believe that the sun sets in a puddle of mud?
I have nothing idea about Quran. I'm not.
Do you?
Muslim.
Do you believe
I
it?
just checked.
Do you believe
I need
today
to
was-
ask
Why
a
do you read the
question.
Quran? Can I ask, why do you read the Quran?
Why do I read the Quran? Well, firstly, this isn't the Quran. It's a translation of the Quran. I can't read the Quran. The Quran's in Arabic.
That's where your
There's
problem
English.
is.
not a
There's English.
message.
That's how you
It's not a message. Yes, I agree. It is a problem. It's a problem that your God can't communicate to humanity, and He has elevated the Arabs above everyone else. So that we all now have to go to the Arabs, apparently, to hear what God is saying. My religion is better than yours because my religion teaches that God can speak in all languages. God can communicate in all languages.
Show me your proof. Does it? I have. Show me your
I
proof.
agree. And they don't speak Arabic. So why do Muslims keep telling us that we need to read Arabic?
Sir, if I may, I'd merely like to
If you
discuss
can
something.
accept Islam without reading Arabic, why can you not criticize it?
If you feel that your points are strong enough
No,
to be
I
publicly
will.
aired,
I will. I will. What, sorry?
Do you have any church for sale? You can buy them.
Do you know that there's churches in Mecca? Do you know that there are Christians converting in Mecca? Do you know that Christians, there are Christians inside Saudi Arabia? It angers them to hear that fact. They deny it. There are underground churches inside Saudi Arabia, and they are not free as the Muslims are free in this country. They are persecuted in Saudi Arabia. They are oppressed in Saudi Arabia.
Is there a pause button on
We
this?
don't need to take
Pause
lectures.
button. I don't think so.
So, do you want to ask a question?
I want to make a point in
Okay, make a
regards
point.
to yours.
Make a
right?
point.
Take for example, when Christians used to rule governments in the medieval ages or in the dark ages, right? If anybody wanted, if Jews wanted to open a synagogue, if Muslims wanted to open a mosque, they would be persecuted, they would be killed. During the times of the Prophet invited Christians to pray in his mosque, and he let the Jews conduct their own affairs. Right? Where is this tolerance in Christianity? There is no tolerance
So,
in Christianity.
his point was,
In that book, in
made
your,
your point.
in your book, no, wait. In your book,
Is that your point?
it says that any religion that doesn't see Jesus Christ as God, as the Lord and Savior, that is a religion of the Antichrist, which means Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Sikhs are all part of the religion of the Antichrist, right? So
that your
you're
point?
telling me the Quran is spreading hatred when your book shows us to be the Antichrist. antithesis of good, to be the embodiment of evil.
Is that your point? Is that your point? So, right, here's why you're wrong, bro. Here's why you're wrong.
Tell me why I'm wrong.
Firstly, Muhammad, before he died, had all Jews and Christians excluded from Saudi Arabia.
Nope.
Before he died. That's in your hadith.
They've been there
That is your hadith. The Christians of Najaf were suppressed. When Muslims invaded Christian lands, you suppressed Christians and turned them into second-class citizens.
Would you like 5
Now
counter
you said to me, where in the Quran does it say you can have sex with a female captive? I'm going to show
Let's stay on our
you.
point right now.
I'm going to show you.
And then we can go there.
No, you don't own this conversation.
I'm part of this
Surah
conversation.
4, 24, also prohibited are women. This is talking about women you can have sex with.
Okay.
Also prohibited are women already married, except those whom your right hands possess.
Okay.
This is talking about women that were captured in war.
Okay.
That is talking about having sex with slaves. You said show me where. I have shown you where.
Okay.
Now answer me this. Do you believe that you can capture women in war and then have sex with them?
Okay. See, the thing is, what you're putting forward right now is the interpretation of this one guy. Okay. There are many other interpretations that show that what your right hand possesses is not actually slaves in war, right?
Says it right here.
It says it right here, but this is not the Quran. This is a translation.
So and again. Whenever we find information that is embarrassing to Muslims, they want to disown it.
No, that's not, man.
That's what you're doing.
Because
it wasn't a Muslim that. It wasn't, brother. It was a Muslim that translated this.
So what?
This is not a Christian translation. It's a Muslim translation.
Bro, a Christian went up to Jews in a synagogue and killed them all. Is he a proper representation of Christianity? You can't say that this is an adequate representation. It's not up to you. Just because he has the label of a Muslim.
You said
A lot of people have different purposes.
You said it's about interpretation.
Okay.
Right. I don't know if you're a Sunni or a Shia. You're a Shia. Right. So I'm going to use an argument that won't work with him. Because you don't accept Sahih al-Bukhari, do you?
No, not all of his hadiths.
No. Do you accept this one? Narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. That while he was sitting with Allah's apostle, he said, "Oh, Allah's apostle, we get female captives as our share of booty, and we are interested in their prices. What is your opinion about coitus interruptus?" Do you know what coitus interruptus is?
To have sex with them.
No, coitus interruptus is to not ejaculate inside the female. It means to withdraw and then ejaculate. So he's being asked. He's being asked. Right. So the Prophet said, "Do you really do that? It is better for you not to do it. No soul which Allah has destined to exist will surely come into existence." Sahih al-Bukhari 3:34-422.
What's your understanding of this? Just before I continue.
So, Muhammad and a war party have captured female slaves. So they've captured women, they've made them slaves, and now they're having sex with them.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of them are not ejaculating inside the females because they don't want to make them pregnant because they fear that will lower the price. So their whole understanding about what to do with these women is based upon how much they will be worth in the market. How much can we sell them for? Bearing in mind that these women have just seen their fathers, their brothers, their uncles and their sons killed in war. Are we not supposed to understand this as rape? Do you honestly think that these women voluntarily had sex with the people that killed their families? But Muhammad is saying it is better for you to ejaculate inside the women you're raping. What is your understanding of it?
I personally have never came across this hadith.
Do you believe it?
I don't know. I don't know who the chain of transmission. If I know the chain of transmission, I can tell you whether
It's
I believe it.
considered sahih.
So okay, so what? I need to see the train of
So what?
transmission. So what? You remember that I'm Shia. I have to see the transmission.
No, it's true. As a Shia, it's quite
I
possible.
have to see the transmission.
No, I accept
Right?
that.
I
accept
need to see who said what. Okay.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
For me, if I were to interpret this hadith, I would think that when the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Do you really do that? It is better for you not to do it." It is to say that all of the things that was said in terms of the coitus, in terms of making them captives, is all wrong. Because one of the main principles of the Prophet was to free slaves. Because of this very logical reason, you free slaves so that they can have bonds to no human on this earth except God, which is the omnipresent being.
So
For me, this hadith contradicts something that I believe in.
This is what we see again and again. Muslims are embarrassed by the reports about their prophet and they want to disown them. I do not blame you.
But
Yeah,
who
but
said that
even
this
Sunnis do it, bro.
Okay, but who
Even
said that
the
this
Sunnis
report
in the park
is
disown
authentic?
these hadiths.
But,
Right,
who says
it's
that
called
this report is
Sahih
authentic?
for a reason.
It's
It's called
by
Sahih.
who? By who?
Yeah, I know as a
Who's
Shia, you
first
don't,
to-
just out of interest, for the camera, just changing this topic ever so
There
slightly.
are lots of hadiths that
As
are
a
authentic with
Shia,
Sahih.
as a Shia,
Yeah.
why do you reject Sunni hadith?
I don't necessarily reject all of the Sunni
Why
hadith.
do you reject some of them?
Because some of them have a chain of transmission wherein the people who have been transmitting the hadith is a very long line of people,
Yes.
right? And sometimes the people within the line of transmission are people that I don't necessarily trust.
Okay, so what you're essentially saying as a Shia is that you do not trust all the people that the Sunnis trust. That's not. I'm not
But
mischaracterizing, am I?
we cannot generalize.
No. I'm just trying to encapsulate your position.
Because at the same
Am I,
time,
me-
because at the same
am I
time-
understanding it right? You're saying that I can't trust all the Sunni hadith because I don't trust all the same people that the Sunnis trust.
It's not only that. It's
So it
because-
is that?
It's not only that.
What else is it?
Okay, if I tell you something and I ask you to tell this guy something and ask this guy something and then tell that guy something, by the time what I say goes to that guy over there with blue eyes,
Yep.
it would have been completely changed. Whether you had the intent to change whatever I said
Yep.
or not.
So-
right? So there is this possibility of flaw.
So now let me ask you this question. As a Christian, when I hear Sunnis and Shias saying, well, we can't agree about who we trust in the chain of Isnad.
But it is like
No, one second.
It is
the same as
Sue,
Catholic.
1 second, bro. 1 second. I'm talking to him. If I, as an outsider, and I see Sunni and Shia saying, well, I don't agree with your chain of transmissions, and then the Sunni said to the Shia, well, I don't agree with your chain of transmissions, and you're both accusing one another of having untrustworthy chains of transmission,
But both are Muslims.
as an outsider, why should I trust any hadith at all when Muslims can't agree who to believe?
Okay,
Different creeds, only different creeds.
okay.
But the same principle.
I'm talking to him, bro.
You don't want to.
No, because I'm
I
talking
would
to him.
forward this point. There are the main fundamental principles that bind Shias and Sunnis together. But I would also like you to see the flip side. With Christianity, you have
Many
Orthodox,
different-
you have Anglican, you
Catholic.
have Protestant, you have Catholic. And the Bible there was an Old Testament and a New Testament, as if the Old Testament was not good enough, so you made a new one.
And the
You know?
problem,
And,
Right, 1
and
second,
plus,
bro.
and plus, the people who wrote the Bible, most of them never even directly met
And
Jesus.
Okay,
Jesus
so
is
how
born
can
in
I
our
trust
land.
what
Allow
you
me
say?
to reply.
Their Jesus
Allow me
is
to
born
reply.
in our land.
Bro, are you going to listen to him or do you
So
want to
that
listen
we
to my
respect
reply?
our religion. We respect
Do you want
our
to? Do
I'm
you want to
trying
listen?
to multitask.
Right. Well, you're a man. Accept that you can't multitask. Every other man does.
Only,
You need
only
to do
women.
that.
Only women.
Yeah. So, I'm not a soy boy. Don't worry about it. So, as I was saying, bro. As I was saying.
Yeah.
So he essentially has admitted that Sunni and Shia can't agree on hadith. He said that. But
This is common knowledge.
rather than deal with the consequences of that reality, he
focus on
wants to
Christianity,
change the
focus on
subject. He wants to get off the topic as quickly as he can.
Focus on your
And we
religion.
see this all the time.
Not at all. I'm trying to
Hi,
show...
hold on, 1 second, hold on, one second.
Okay, go ahead.
All Christians, all Christians believe in the fundamentals of our faith. To be a Christian, you have to believe in the Nicene Creed. If you don't believe in the Nicene Creed, you are not a Christian. Full stop.
But there are good
And
Christian and
every
bad
Christian believes in the
There are
Nicene
good
Creed.
Christian and bad Christian.
That is our fundamental doctrine, and the Nicene Creed says nothing about the canon of Scripture at all. At all. It's not a direct equivalence. Now, 1 second, 1 second.
All right. Your last point.
Hadith are fundamental to your religion.
Not really, no.
They are
It's secondary
fundamental.
sources, not primary sources.
They are
Christian
fundamental.
fundamental.
They are fundamental.
They are important, not
They
fundamental.
are fundamental. Because, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because they change the character of the 5 pillars. Muslim Shias and Muslim Sunnis do not perform Salat in the same way. They do not understand Salat in the same way. And Sunnis do not consider the Salat that is performed in a way different to their own as being valid.
The same as your
All right.
And vice versa.
Can I
100
respond
times
by the last point that you made? Right. The way in which we practice our religion,
The 5 pillars.
They have
right?
100 times of
Let's
salat.
stay on the prayer because
Let's
that was
stick
the last
with-
point.
yeah, yes,
That was
let's
last
stick with
point
the
that you
prayer.
made, right? The prayer. We may pray like this, they may pray like this, but we pray together, right? We can pray together and it's permissible. Second of all, you talked about how Christians all believe in the fundamental principles of Christianity. Right, explain to me why Protestants and Catholics always used to have wars. Second of all, when it comes to Muslims, we all believe in the 5 pillars. We believe in charity, prayer,
we are
and
humans
fasting,
at the end.
right? And we have very specific verses regarding the reasons why we should stick together regardless of our differences. Just because we disagree sometimes on the hadiths that are transmitted does not mean that we have more differences than similarities.
So,
Right?
let's just deal with that. Let's just deal with that. Because there are plenty of Sunnis in this park that would say you as a Shia are not a Muslim.
Who says I'm not a Muslim as a Sunni?
There are many.
Nobody.
There are many Sunnis that say that.
Oh, come on. Okay, where are they?
They're not going to do it now because that'll
Where are
prove
they?
my point.
Wait.
And they won't want to embarrass themselves because you're
no,
defending
no,
Islam right now.
No, they believe it.
It's on camera. There are plenty of Muslims that do that.
Where?
We've seen them. We've
Guys,
seen
who
them.
says I'm a kafir?
So, we've seen
Ain't
them.
nobody
bro.
here.
So, let's just be clear. Let's just be clear. The hadiths
You can't
that
find
Muslims,
anybody.
that we can. The hadiths,
Okay.
they say that hadiths are not fundamental, but they are. Because unless you're going to say that the Quran stands alone, which no Muslim will, every Muslim says you understand the Quran through the hadith. So hadiths are
who said that?
fundamental
Who said
because you cannot understand the Quran
You're wrong,
in
Nabi.
isolation. He says I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
going to
100%
prove myself
wrong.
right.
Before you come here,
Show me in the Quran how you should
You
pray.
don't know what you are talking about.
Show me in the Quran how you should pray. If you can do it just
First
with the
of all,
Quran and no
When you
hadith,
say Quran,
show me.
you should be clean. You say Quran, you should be clean. first.
No, that's your religion, not my religion.
Of course.
That's your religion, not
Why
my
you are
religion.
talking about
Shall I respond
Muslim
to
if
you?
you don't know
Shall I
about
respond
your
You,
religion?
I'm going to prove you wrong.
You don't know your
Shall I
religion.
respond
You
No,
talk about
I'm going to
other
prove you
religion.
wrong. He just said, I'm asking you now. You said hadith are not fundamental. You said that.
It is not.
Right, so show me how you perform salat in the Quran.
Why you are focusing
What are the
on salat?
prostrations?
What is the relation
Show
between
me.
salat
with me
and
or
the
him?
religion?
I'm not talking about salad, I'm talking about salat.
Okay.
Show me in the
This
Quran.
is Shia and Sunni.
Listen, okay.
Can you? Show me in the... I'll ask,
Listen,
he's not answering my question. I'll ask you.
Debate is with me.
Okay, you said hadiths are not fundamental.
They're not fundamental.
Right, show me how you perform salat
Okay,
using the
okay.
Quran alone.
Can you
Show us.
Okay. I would just like to deconstruct the assumption of your argument.
Okay.
Tell me how you swimming in the book.
The assumption of your argument is
According
that
to the book,
if
how you
the
swimming?
Quran is able to show us how to pray, then this makes then hadiths are no longer fundamental, right? And that hadiths, because they show us how to pray, they are fundamental, right? But what you don't understand is religion. The basis of religion, the fundamental principles of religion have to do with our belief, which is something that is within our psychological makeup rather than in our actions. It's in the intent. Okay? So by definition, the hadiths are secondary sources and not primary sources. And they are therefore not fundamental. Okay? Because the way in which I carry out my salat is not fundamental. What is fundamental is my belief. Do you get what I mean?
So what you're saying is you can go into a mosque and you can pray however you like, so long as your intention is good.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
But the intention is a very important
I
part
agree.
of it.
In
That is-
Christianity, we have exactly the same.
We have similarities. So that is fundamental. My intent to go into the mosque and want to pray to God, not to impress everybody else because of how humble I am, right? That's fundamental.
Can you go into the
The way in
mosque?
which I carry out my
Can you
religion
go into the
is not
mosque and
fundamental.
pray however you like?
It has to be in line with the religion.
It has to be in line with the religion. I agree. That's Islamic teaching. Where do you get the form of salat from? The Quran or the Hadith?
The Quran teaches orders us to pray.
Correct.
And the Hadith shows us how to pray.
And the Quran and the Hadith show you. So, in terms of the performance of salat, do you need salah?
This is
Okay,
practical
fine.
worship.
Salah.
Practical.
Do
How
you
you
use
teach
the
us
Quran
swimming
alone or the
according
Quran
to the
and
book?
Hadiths?
How you teach
To
me
understand
swimming?
and to carry out this one of the pillars of Islam, this salah. Do you use Quran and Hadiths or Quran alone?
What context are you talking about?
I'm just talking about
I just
the
answered
context
your
of
question.
salah.
The hadith is complementary, it's not fundamental. This is what you're not getting. There's a difference.
Okay, so without the Hadith, you wouldn't know how to perform salah. That's
هذا
correct, right?
عبادة عملية. أخذنا أبا عن جد.
We as Muslims,
يعني
I think I
كيف
know your
واحد
angle.
يتعلم السباحة من الكتاب لو من السويمنج.
Right, we as
هذا
Muslims
ما
wouldn't do it.
تتعلم السباحة
Would
من
you agree
الكتاب
with me then?
نهائياً.
Because he's saying it's
هذا
not.
عبادة يعني
The
شيء عملي.
Hadiths are fundamental
الصلاة
to
شيء عملي.
understand Islam.
أبا عن جد أنت عمرنا 6 سنوات أبونا علمنا وأبونا من جد حتى
No,
وصلنا
it's related.
فهمت كيف؟ مو بالبوك مو بالحديث بالكلام.
Either and everywhere. But you ask one question, then you ask the
Yes.
second question, which
Yes.
is very broad. So that's a bit.
And you're
Okay, just we
conflating-
can use the
that's a bit
example. We can
genuine on
stick
your
with the
part.
example. No, it's completely genuine.
No.
In
It's not,
terms
because
of the
if you asked about
example of
salah,
salah. Yes,
You asked
exactly.
about prayer, but then you said.
Is that not one of the
is it
5
fundamental
pillars?
to understand the Hadith for religion?
Is that not one of the 5 pillars? And aren't you,
عبادة عملية.
like, did Muhammad not convey a single way to pray, or did he convey multiple ways to pray?
What do you mean?
So, Sunni and Shia, they perform their salah differently. Their form is different. I know that as a fact, you know it as a fact, I don't know if you know it as a fact.
I don't understand the crux of the matter.
Okay, I promise you, am I correct in understanding that Shia and
There are
Sunni
different.
perform?
Yes.
Right,
But that
so
that
one
doesn't
second.
constitute a fundamental
One
principle
second.
of the
One
religion.
second. One second.
Go ahead. Yes.
Did Muhammad communicate multiple ways to perform salah or one way to perform salah?
One way, but
One way. So who's right, the Sunni or the Shia?
the thing is, he did not say that there are things called mustahabbat. So there is a way that you can make your prayer the baseline, and then you can the baseline of what is acceptable salat, and then you can conduct salat in a way that makes it even more acceptable.
My question to you.
Right?
Hold on. You're not dealing with my question.
I am. But
No,
you're
my
not
question
letting-
is specific. No, I am hearing, but he's not talking about the question I asked. The question that I asked is, Muhammad gave a way of performing salah. So whose way is correct? The Sunni or the Shia?
Look, by engaging in such a question, I contribute to the discord between the Sunnis and the Shia. Right? Therefore, I should not answer that question because the most important thing.
I would. Are you saying you don't know?
It's not that. That's not the case. It's my opinion on the
I'll
matter.
gladly
may
answer the question.
differentiate between what I believe and other people believe. Okay? The main intent is that the prayer goes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. to good, right? And if you keep in mind, the fundamental principles of our religion always talks about the intention.
I get that.
And
I'm not questioning that.
Which basically means
I'm not questioning that.
the actions are based on
I'm not questioning that. I get that. We have exactly the same
so-
principle in the Christian faith.
Yes.
So I wouldn't criticize you for something that we have ourselves.
So that's fundamental.
Right, hold on, but here's the thing. No,
way we carry out the
No, you're
behavior
still
is fundamental.
right. You've basically said I don't want to answer the question.
No, he didn't say that.
Yes, that is exactly what he said. No, what he said, if you were listening, is that if I answer this question, I will add to the discord between Sunnis and Shia, so I will not answer that question. That is what he said.
I didn't say that
Now,
word.
here's
And
why
you know
it
it's
matters.
okay, it's on camera.
One
I
second,
never
bro.
said that. And
Well,
you know-
here's though the people can decide at home. Here's why it matters.
Leave your ignorance.
Here's
and-
why
and
it matters.
Embrace the
Here's why it
truth.
matters.
Let me explain why it matters.
Here's why it
When you have a
matters.
camera, you lie.
Because Muslims go around saying we have these wonderful religion called Islam that is founded on the Quran, and we have this Quran interpreted by these hadiths, and we can trust these hadiths because they are reliable, they're sahih, we know their isnad, and we know the people that's in the isnad, and we know what their character is and how trustworthy they are. But yet, in something as basic as salah, as basic as prayer, there are two forms, which means that the tradition of the Prophet was not properly preserved. One of these two groups is wrong, either the Sunni or the Shia. And that throws into question the very reliability of the tradition itself.
No, not really, because
That's why it
what
matters.
you're making it as if it's a dichotomy between right and wrong, instead of seeing that it's on a spectrum of least correct and most correct.
So who's most
Right?
correct, Sunni or Shia?
That's a reductionist question. By its very nature, that question
What
is
you're doing, there's a lot of diversity.
Exactly.
And
You need
this
to
is
be
what
aware about
this
the
is.
whole Islamic tradition. There is this jurisprudence, there is this whole tradition. So you must,
For example,
you should know about
example,
this
there are
whole
7,
tradition.
8.
So Shias and Sunnis, both are part of Islamic discourse, right? You can't divide, you can't draw binaries between Shias and Sunnis. This whole
Sunnis and
Islamic-
Shias draw binaries. That's
No,
why they're killing
no.
one another in
drawing
Iraq and
binaries.
Syria.
That's not
Here's a
like
question
that.
to
They've
you.
lived alongside each other for
Yeah.
so long.
The English gentleman's got a
That
question.
shows that you have no knowledge about politics. Don't you ever say
No.
that Sunnis and Shias are killing each other
So they're
because
not
of some
killing one another.
fundamental
So they're not killing
theological
one
beliefs.
another.
You have sectarian
So the
entrepreneurs.
so
you
the
have
city
external
in Iraq is
intervention
not being
by the
bombed
United
by
States
Sunni terrorists.
that caused
Saudi
all of this.
Arabia
There are
is not
political
bombing
factors.
and killing
There are political
millions
factors.
of Yemeni children.
Listen, there are political factors behind why Sunnis may kill Shias and Shias may kill Sunnis, rather than the differences in the theological beliefs. They have lived alongside each other, conscious of these
The
differences.
division
for so long.
came about through
But
politics. You know that.
through politics. That's what I'm saying.
So who are the rightly guided caliphs?
who are the rightly guided?
Yes, who are the rightly guided caliphs?
What does this have to do with why Sunnis
Because
and
you're
Shias are killing
saying,
each other?
oh, they're killing one another for politics, not religion.
Oh my
But
God!
the party
It's
of
the
Ali,
modern day politics.
the party of Ali,
Sectarianism.
which is what the Shia came from, fought the Sunnis precisely because they believed that Ali was meant to succeed Muhammad.
Not for those.
Am I wrong?
reasons. And sectarianism, if you look into politics, and take it from a politics student, okay? Sectarianism is a modern day construct that was created by external intervention into
So they
our
didn't
land.
fight.
Do you know why? Hey, do you know why Sunnis and Shias have so much differences today in Iraq? Do you want me to give you a history about
You have
Iraq
so many
after
differences
2003?
theologically
That-
and in practice
Okay,
because
okay.
the
So
tradition of
it's-
Muhammad
okay.
was not
If
preserved.
these theological-
That's why you have those
If
differences.
those theological differences were there for like thousands of years, how come they only started to kill each other since 2003?
They have. You don't know history. You might be a politics student, but you're not a student of religion, and you're not a student of history.
If you understand,
Shia
you see,
and
there's
Sunni,
always a political
no,
development that causes the death.
What
that causes
happened?
These conflicts.
One of the
Okay?
biggest festivals as a Shia, what is it? You celebrate the martyrdom of who?
Ashura, Hussein, Imam Hussein.
And what happened to him?
He died fighting an oppressor,
Who was the oppressor?
Yazid.
Was he a Muslim?
And
There you
label,
go.
and label.
There you
and
go.
label.
There
Anybody-
you go.
Hey,
In
you can-
label.
hey,
Do you
can-
think the Sunnis agree with you?
I don't. They can disagree with me, but this has nothing to do with the present. Okay?
Most of Sunni agree with him, yeah.
Because the
And
most.
Sunni agree with him.
a lot of Sunnis do agree with me, and the more, if I fall into your trap, I'll be falling into the trap of talking so much about history, fighting so much about history that I have no ability to fight for the future with my brothers. Okay? This is what you're trying to do. You're trying to create discord between Sunnis and
brother.
Shias. You're trying
Hold on
to
one
show
second.
that there's
You
this
say that,
fundamental ancient
but what
hatred
you don't
between
understand,
Sunnis and Shias.
I never hear a Muslim like you correct the Dawah team who go around attacking Christians and our beliefs. Never. You've never ever gone around
because I'm
and
omnipresent.
challenged.
Because I see them all the time.
No,
right?
I'm talking about ever in all the time that I've been here.
I do.
In all the time that I've been here.
This guy has been here
In
for a
all
long
the time that
so-
I've been here. I've never heard Muslims go up to other Muslims and say, why are you attacking the Christian faith?
Like, do you know how hard
Why
it is
are you
to tell
attacking
them-
Christian
tell them-
beliefs?
Do you know how hard it is to tell them to stop?
And did
when
you
every
try to
single
do
day-
that in this conversation?
When every single day.
You did, didn't you? You tried to flip the conversation back onto the Bible, didn't you?
To show
Did you do that?
To show you that the accusations you're throwing at the Quran are the same accusations I can throw at Christianity.
So we have a different belief to you.
Reduction.
Right, we have a different belief.
So
but the
you
same
cannot
arguments-
throw the same argument back.
Yeah, we can.
No,
We
you
can,
can't.
there
Because
are
if our
arguments
fundamental beliefs are different to your fundamental beliefs, a valid, one second. A valid criticism of a belief, for it to be valid, must take full appreciation of the fundamentals of the paradigm that it's critiquing. Therefore, if two worldview systems have different fundamental beliefs, the criticism that you can form has to be different, otherwise it is not a valid criticism. As a Christian, one second, as a Christian, I have fundamentally different beliefs to you.
Okay, but
which means you cannot simply take my criticism of your religion and reverse it onto mine, because when you do so, the criticism becomes invalid.
No, that's
you
not
have to
necessarily
start
true.
from the fundamental
Because-
premises first to make
the
a
way
criticism.
in which Christianity has
Here's my
carried
question
out.
to you. It's rudimentary. What is your thesis statement? Is your thesis statement that Islam is wrong, or that Christianity is superior to Islam? That you believe that your religion is the religion that should be preferenced? And for a couple of reasons. The first that you outlined was that Sunni and Shiite groups are fundamentally irreconcilably different. Your statement surrounded Salah, right? And you were trying to outline how those two were completely different and couldn't be agreed upon, right? That internal discord meant that coming to some sort of fundamental religious truth could not be achieved via Islam. And the implication, correct me if I'm wrong, from you is that Christianity can lead one to those fundamental truths. Yes or no?
Okay, so in answer to the question, because there was a lot of baggage that came with the question, we need to address some of that baggage. So my fundamental thesis...
context.
Yes, that's fine. My fundamental thesis is this. The Quran says to me, as a Christian, that if I find errors in that Quran, it is not from Allah. Now, I don't know if you were here at the very beginning of this conversation.
Sadly not.
But I started this conversation by pointing out rudimentary scientific errors in the Quran. That's what my thesis was about. It went off on a tangent because this brother accused me of reading the Quran only to find errors and not to see its holiness, which is why we went on to a different topic. But my fundamental premise is that the Quran fails its own test. It says it's free from error when it's filled with errors. And that means that according to the Quran, not me, according to Allah, not me, it's not from God. And if it's not from God, you should stop believing it. Now, what you do with that, as a Christian, I then posit to you the truth of the Christian faith, which is not built on a book, which is why your criticism is not valid.
It's built on an
It
old
is
book
not
that
built
wasn't
on
good
a
enough,
book.
So you made a new book.
It is no. You see? You see?
And
You have mischaracterized the Christian faith
Of course.
rather than
And this is what
engage
you're
with
gonna
its
say.
fundamental premises.
But is that not the truth?
No, it's not the truth. And that's the point. The Muslims come and they challenge Christians based upon their characterization of Christianity. But when someone who takes the time to study Islam's fundamental beliefs and criticize their fundamental beliefs, they don't want to listen. They're embarrassed by their sources.
My friend will be listening
You don't
to
seem
you.
to understand
Wait,
what
he's
fundamental
making a
means.
point now.
Do you think this conversation can proceed if I can show that the same critique you premise towards all of Islam by failing the Quran's own test
Can be applied
can
to you.
also be applied to Christianity? Would
Yes.
you concede that?
Yes.
Right.
So show
But
me what
before
is the
that-
biblical test.
But the biblical test?
Yes.
Take your pick.
What is
You
the
can't-
biblical test?
You can't go to the previously aforementioned screeds and say that the biblical texts are the source of your religion. Which one are they? Also, before you like criticize everyone here for attacking.
No, I'm not criticizing everyone here. Don't mischaracterize me.
Well, you're
I'm
surrounded by
criticizing.
Muslims.
I'm criticizing Islam.
All right, okay.
Not people.
Let's go with that.
Islam.
Cool. Cool.
Islam is a part of me. You are
Okay.
criticizing me.
I'm not going to
Stop being a soy boy. I'm talking about the religion. I'm not talking about the people.
So you're saying I can disconnect myself from my religion?
Okay, fine. This is faffing. It doesn't matter, right? So the next point, right, is you need to provide a characterization of Christianity that you believe is representative and generous. I will accept whatever it is. I think the fundamentals of reason say that you uphold the principle of charity. Give the opposition the best possible version of their argument and disprove that.
Okay.
Go.
So,
Great question, by the way.
it is a great question. It is a great
Hope you
question.
can answer it.
Yeah. So, in terms of the Christian faith, what is the test that our Lord provides? What is it that he says that you should judge the Christian faith by? Speaking of religious teachers, he speaks and says this: you shall know them by their fruits, and by their fruits you shall know them. For a good tree does not produce bitter fruit, and a bad tree does not produce good fruit, but each tree produces fruit according to its kind. So, using that test, I challenge you, and you if you want to join them, let us compare the life of Jesus Christ to the life of Muhammad, and see which one of them is the better example for us today.
By what standard?
That's the standard.
By what standard?
The problem with that standard
you've
is
not
that
answered the question,
it
by
is
the
a
way.
metaphor.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
You didn't even
It's
answer
not a
the question.
metaphor.
You just made a challenge,
Okay.
and you didn't even answer his question.
No, it by definition is, right? Because you said, how shall you know those that, how shall you know,
You can't even
I'm
quote
paraphrasing. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't quote 35 seconds of monologue. Wow, I must be a moron. No.
No, your words, bro. Your words, not mine. Your words.
Right? Okay, fine then. I'm an idiot. Correct me
Again,
if
your
I'm
words, not mine.
wrong. I don't.
You really should stop insulting yourself.
You do
There's
realize.
no need to.
You do realize that I don't.
Why are you
care.
attacking him?
He's
personally now?
insulting himself. I've never said a word.
And now you're
He calls himself a
You're
moron.
psychologically-
He calls himself an
You're
idiot, and you're
psychologically
blaming me.
abusing him, so he doesn't prove you wrong.
accepting his sarcasm.
I'm trying to be nice, right? If you take being nice as a concession that person loses in a debate, then frankly, you again abandon the principle of charity, and I will leave. All right? Simple as that. We can't
contradicting
agree on
yourself.
that. We can't agree on anything else. That I agree with the fundamentals of reason, and that's what I'm here for. I don't have a horse in either side of this race. I really couldn't care less if by the end of today you won this entire discussion. I couldn't care less if he won this entire discussion. I couldn't care less which side did. What I care about is getting to some sort of truth, synthesis. Antithesis, thesis, get somewhere good. For the moment, I'm taking antithesis, just as a thought experiment. Merely that. In that instance, let's continue from where we dropped off when you called me when you said that I called myself an idiot. Talking about Jesus' characterization of who you should listen to. He takes first, you shall know an individual as to the fruits that he provides, right? Those fruits would be good or bad depending on the tree that provided them, right? That is the textbook definition of a metaphor, saying that one party is akin to another party in some sort of aspect that is not internal to themselves or is not obviously factual. So, that is a metaphor. That can't be disputed. That's how grammar works. If you want to take that up, take it up with the Queen. I believe it's her English, right? So, let's continue along this. The problem with metaphors is that they are, by nature, open to interpretation, right? That metaphor could be taken one of two ways. Way number one, right? There may be others. I haven't looked into this for 3 hours. Way one, let's say that each person produces a consistent amount of bullshit, right? That person could be considered somebody who produces poor information and is hence a bad tree. But then a good person is someone who produces continuously good information, considered a good tree. In that instance, let's ask the question, what is a good tree? What does it mean to be spouting truth versus to be spouting falsehoods? Your fundamental test doesn't provide a way to apply the test. If you shall know it unto itself, then it is merely a sense of what is true, or a sense that this is good, or a sense that this is poor, or bullshit, or whatever you'd like to term it. So, how do you apply your metaphorical test?
So, the way that we apply the metaphorical test, because literature and the use of cultural images are understood by people without further reasoning. In most contexts, if you say the president, most people's minds will simply go to the president of America.
Fair enough.
Why? Because in the Western world, there is a cultural resonance between the office of the president and our closest ally, the Americans. If we speak about the Queen, everyone here's mind goes to Her Majesty the Queen living in Windsor Palace. They don't go to some other queen living in some other country. In other words, terminology and language in the way that we use it sits within a cultural milieu, and that cultural milieu gives it its context. Christ said quite clearly, you shall know them by their fruits, and by their fruits you shall know them. And then he goes on to speak about the trees. He is speaking to a Jewish audience who are soaked in the teachings of the prophets.
Yes.
That means that when he is speaking in those terms, he is speaking within that paradigm that phrase is understood. It is not taken in isolation just to mean anything you want saying because it's a metaphor. It's communicating something within a culture. Like I say, the Queen or the President.
Yes, but you haven't answered the question yet.
I don't need to give further qualification. The qualification is there already in the minds of the people.
I'm dreadfully sorry about this.
1 second, don't interrupt. I didn't interrupt you.
Fair enough.
In terms of Christ's teaching, he was speaking about what was understood to his audience to be good. And what was understood to his audience to be good would be that which was defined by the prophets, that understanding of righteousness, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, to seek your neighbour's good as if it was your own, to have a generosity of heart, to have a sense of hospitality, to have a sense of defending the weak and the oppressed, to oppose injustice and tyrants like the caliphs. That is the kind of justice that Jesus was talking about. Now, in terms of what was considered bad, it would be things like raping female captives, having sex with prepubescent children, oppressing, which would also be bad. You're quite right. You're also quite right.
You didn't add that in there, so I just thought I'd do it.
Yeah, you're right.
So please,
you're right.
That's wrong, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Say that out loud.
And Muhammad having sex with a child was wrong as well. So, those are the things. So let's go on. Now that we understand the terms, let's go on and compare Muhammad's life to Jesus. I'll ask you as a man of reason.
Not yet. Before that, we have to... Look, you delivered several points, and I'd love to continue, but first responses must be made. Okay?
You didn't answer really the question.
The first thing is that you laid out a series of things...
I gotta go in
that
10
the
minutes,
prophets-
sorry.
Okay, well that's fine. Like most debates take like 8 minutes, like 8 to 5 minute speeches anyway, so we'll get somewhere. That's good. So, you talked about how the prophets had a very clear set of characteristics. Those that you would see in the Old Testament, which is surprisingly similar to the Jewish scripts, right? They've been changed over time, and they've been preserved to the best of their abilities in Hebrew, etc., whereas ours have been translated several times. Now here we have to ask a question. A, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There is no question Christ did speak that. I've heard it in all 4 of the books of Christ's life, right? But what about all of the passages in the description of what is considered righteous treatment of another? An eye for an eye was considered a standard law of the time. A standard law then upheld by the scriptures and by the Bible. I cannot recall the exact prophet who stated it, but I know that every prophet has a dedicated book. Consequently, it stands to reason that if they argued, do unto others as they would do unto you, they could not concurrently agree with to give an eye for an eye as any attack. That is not something I would like to do unto myself, nor would any reasoning person want that to do unto themselves. Obviously, then, the prophets, as you describe them, are internally contradictory. So, how do we tell a good apple from a bad apple? Or, let's go on to another one. Give me another example of one of the things that you consider standard for the day.
Okay, so allow me to reply to the number of points that he's made. Firstly, I just need to correct him factually. The discourse on the Sermon of the Mount, where it says, do unto others as you do unto you, it does not appear in all 4 Gospels. It appears in the Synoptic Gospels, which is 3. Secondly, he said that all the prophets have a book dedicated to them. That is incorrect also. Moses has 5 books, and it is in the books of Moses that it talks about an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. In those books, it also says, do unto others as you would have done unto you. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. The standard of goodness that is taught in the Christian faith is that good which you desire for yourself. You aspire for your neighbor. That is Christ's teaching.
No, but the problem...
No, 1 second, I didn't interrupt you. Sure. Now, it does not take any great wit or genius for us to understand what is in our own best interests. To have a home, to have food, clean water, clothing, the family, to be cared for when we are persecuted or oppressed. These are all things we would want for ourselves. By comparison, when Hitler came along and he said that the Jews were vermin, by the good that we want for ourselves, we can criticize this knowing that it is not good. By comparison, when Muhammad came along and said, make the Alim al-Kitab humiliated, a subject people under your neck, under your boot, we know that that is not comparable to Christ's teaching. So we can make objective moral statements based upon comparisons of the religions. And Muhammad comes out a failure in comparison to the shining light that is Jesus Christ. By comparison, what would you offer? What is your criticism of Christ's teaching?
My criticism is not of Christ's teachings, because we
there you
haven't
go.
moved there. We haven't moved there yet. Oh, sure, I'd be glad to criticize Christ till the
go
sun
ahead.
goes down, but we don't have time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to respond directly to your call of do as you would, but always try and oppose tyranny and the subjugation of other peoples. The example we were given was the Jews in Nazi Germany. A good example of unfair oppression. As is this. In this verse, Samuel, one of the earlier leaders of Israel, orders genocide against a neighboring people. This is what the Almighty says. For those of you reading at home, Samuel 15:3. Now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey, all that they have and are. That is a very clear, very direct statement by Samuel, and even you can't dispute that that's a prophet, for genocide. All right, great. That is our shining tree of what is goodness. You know it as from the prophets to be good. If that is the case, then I am entirely comfortable with criticizing Christ, as you asked, because his presentation of what is good as that of the prophet in your context is deplorable.
So, in reply, the brother's argument is based upon a fundamental misunderstanding of the Christian faith. Fundamental. And this is the problem we see again and again and again in the park. Because despite Mansour and Shamsi's claim that Muslims learn every day, they come to the park asking the same questions every day, and have done for the last 20
He's not a
years.
Muslim. Why are you changing the subject?
Don't interrupt, bro. So,
if you're saying something wrong, you know,
in terms of this specific criticism, it is based upon a misunderstanding of our faith. Christ, in the statement where he says, "Do unto others as you should have them do unto you," is in the Sermon of the Mount when he takes the Mosaic law, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. He takes that restraint given in the Mosaic law and he takes it deeper. So he says that when someone strikes you on your right cheek, turn to him your left. Do not.
That's why he says kill your children, huh?
Do not.
He never said that.
Do not.
Samuel.
Do not simply repay evil for evil. So he takes what the Mosaic law is teaching and he deepens it. And the understanding of the Jewish people was that within that law there was justice. That was the overriding concept of the Jewish law. And Christ takes that deeper in their understanding. He quotes Samuel. But do Jews go around arguing for genocide today? No.
2,000 years have
Do
passed.
Christians go around arguing for genocide today? No.
What happened
No.
in the Middle Ages, in the Dark Ages?
But
what about the Christian Zionists? What about the Christians behind American foreign
can
policy?
we
huh?
find examples of Muslims arguing for genocide today? Yes, we can.
Christian priests have
Yes,
pedophiles.
we can.
Christians have killed Jews.
So there is a real difference in the teaching of Muhammad and Jesus. A point that the brother has not wanted to deal with in this entire conversation.
I haven't wanted to deal with it because it's just been raised.
Because you have no
All
leg
right?
to stand on.
So let's talk about.
I've got to go, I'm
religion.
afraid.
Okay. Do you mind if I just?
I've got to
you
go.
can literally time me for like 3 minutes.
I have to go.
Okay, that's
My time's up.
That's fine. I'm not going to continue if you're not here to defend yourself. That's not fair. And one last thing.
I've got to go.
Is important.
I've got to go.
This is just clarity.
I have
nothing against you.
I don't think
just
you
here to
are.
discuss.
I'm not one of these soy boys, mate. I don't take it personally.
You shake the hands of him, but not the Muslim.
Yeah, of course. I'll shake your hand. Why would I not shake your hand? But just so you know, in England, it's polite to take off your gloves when you shake someone's hand because it shows.
We did not know.
It's all right, don't worry.
Let's do it again.
Let's do it again. There we go.
In that case,
There we go.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
God bless.
I'm a South African player.
I am a Christian.
It's nice to see young Englishmen Christian.
Thank you.
Very unusual.
Yeah, I know. Sadly.
Very unusual
Sadly.
to see someone
Sadly.
Christian still believing in the faith of Christianity. Yes?
I greet you all in the name of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ. God bless. Have a lovely afternoon.
Hallelujah.
Take care. Good night.
That's good. That's great. Long live freedom. We're all free to believe what we like. You believe what you like. You choose. Choose and pick what you like. Okay, good luck. Yeah, pick up what you like. Freedom of belief. We need freedom of belief, which most of people they don't have today, because a lot of people are brainwashed. A lot of people they have no know very little education, very, very little tiny education.
Come take over everything from your humanity.
Come, man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. Listen. COE. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. I don't even listen to Sky YG. I just listen to COE.
Hi guys,
Man, don't
it's
listen to
like Big
BBC.
Ahmed.
Man, don't listen to
I just
ITV.
wanted to address certain things that's been going on online. And there's been a lot of online beef happening recently. And it's getting quite out of hand, to be honest with you, because we have these channels like See Alive, Random Exposure, who go out their way to make videos basically slandering people and diminishing their character.